everybody, and welcome to our show today. Welcome to Vets Coming Clean, where I'm your host, Peggy, the enforcer, and my co-host,
Oh, I'm
Granny.
Granny Lisa.
She's in the Army, and today we're interviewing Laura Eisenhower. Laura, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Great to see you guys. Thanks
Welcome.
for having me.
Great to
Oh, we're
see you.
excited.
I didn't know if you'd want me to read your bio or if you'd like to tell everybody about yourself. Which would be
Yeah,
easier?
I mean, it's just so weird listening to the bio, right? It's like you're like
Hi.
putting it all out there, like, okay, I'm doing this, and this is my greater intent. But when I hear it being read, I'm like, yeah, I'm a work in progress, and I'm still like trying the best I can. But yeah, I do astrology readings, and my intent and focus in like exploring that kind of like one-on-one work with people is because we are so connected to everything. It connects with the planetary grid network, it connects with the multidimensional cosmos, and the best thing that we can remind ourselves of or awaken to is all that we are truly made of. Like, we've been so duped out of so much of who we truly are, and that unconsciousness to it is what has created these powers that be, that are wanting to push all sorts of false narratives and artificial timelines and overlays and projections that it's like we could instantly just snap ourselves out of it. So I think yeah, my bio, like, maybe the warning of the military industrial complex, and like, okay, where are we gonna like get to a greater understanding of that warning, because there's so much that has not been told in our history. There's rewritten history, so we have no way to heal as a humanity if we're relying on false stories.
Oh, right. I mean, I tell people all
Yeah,
the time, whoever wins the wars is who writes history books. It's crazy. So, thing with our show is we invite people on and we just simply two veterans chatting with people, asking them, what have you seen? And you've apparently seen a lot, and you've seen a lot that Granny and I've had suspicions about but nobody to talk to confirm. So we'd like to hear what you've seen and what you know.
I haven't had the extraordinary experiences like some of the people that I work with, right? I feel like I'm very much an advocate for, contactees and abductees. I was pre-targeted before birth, so I definitely have like my weird galactic connection to things beyond this world that has shaped my journey. But what I've most like just gained is what I've learned from the people that I've met, and trying to put puzzle pieces together, but maybe committing to be like very earthbound, even though I'm like galactic. It's just um I just, we all have our own like agreements. We're all galactic, right? Some people might be completely shut down and just playing along with the narrative until they have like a crisis. And that is the greater initiation of like the whys behind our existence of tragedy and adversity. And so in those moments we're being tested. Do we get to know ourselves more, or do we give our power away more? And when we get to know ourselves more, we begin to unlock all these barriers and frequency fences that are only solidified through our consenting to a belief system or a distortion or a falsity that we can appreciate when we're free of it. We don't have to cast at the enemy, but we're not controlled by it. We're not infected by it to the point where whatever end goal is for that system, to be achieved. And maybe that'll exist in another reality, but if it's the one that we freed ourselves from being invested in, we can create a different trajectory for ourselves on this human in this human experience.
Absolutely. I'm hoping every day more people start waking up and seeing the narrative and the bigger picture if they start paying attention.
I have a
It's
question.
obvious.
So, if you are, let's say, asleep to all of this, and then you have an incident to where you're going, whoa, wait a minute. After you realize the truth, is that make it more easier to recognize the lies that are going to be fed towards you? For example, on this plane, or um, like with our military or with our government. Um, Once you're free, are you able to see and recognize?
Well, I think we set ourselves free, but then we have to ask ourselves, what are we still invested in? What do we feel like we still have to contend with? We could have like a freedom of consciousness, but still be complacent or in agreement, even if your thought forms are going elsewhere, knowing like, should I really play by these rules? Does this really make sense? Is this really reality? So there's always something like to crush and override in order to manifest something different. But then there's the things that we're going to witness that can't really be unlocked until enough people are in agreement to break that sort of bigger picture program of world wars, of divide and conquer, of like all these things we see. Everything is about just. I might be going off track with your question. I've done.
No, you're not. I'm right with you.
But kind of ask that again, just to pull me back.
Well, if you can recognize the lies or the stories that they're trying to feed you, now that you've awakened, yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, kind of what I'm saying is if the outer reality becomes your reality, where you're believing in it, you're invested in it. Just like you believe in a partner or a collaboration or your friend or your, feeling loved, that's all like external. Where does the red flag test you enough to say, I should not be in a relationship with this anymore because it's literally not serving me? Where can we reclaim the dormant aspects of our DNA and the inner treasures to override that? Because that's what they're trying to keep us from. And it's almost like a joke on us. It's like the whole medical industry, like everything is
right.
We do not need to be going down this path. We have so much more within us. And haven't we seen enough assaults and ridiculousness to fall back on, our intuition to move through that threshold, right? Of being more soul centered, more deep, more like, oh, look at these narratives being stirred that are trying to create hatred and confusion. It's like introduced because that is the formula for a parasitic being to latch on to something to steal its life force and its creative imagination. It's duped us out of like so much when we all love and care and know what we're doing and how to do it. It's just that like that's the prison planet part of it. Like when people are confined to it and not advocating for the next level of release to happen, because it's not about that facade of all the success you can have, without denying the predatory and dark aspects of it that have literally drained the human race in order to feed a certain few while children are being trafficked and their life force and all that component of society is kind of being ignored, where in the headlines like somebody's going to jail. It's like this whole system needs to like be put behind bars because their criminal stories are almost worse than some kid murdered somebody or some person. They're doing this every day. There's no excuse to put something in people's bodies that could kill them. That's the criminal activity of our governments compared to it's just, yeah.
Well, let me ask you a question. I do a lot of research, Laura, and I've been doing research on cannabis and natural medicine because natural medicine is what helped me heal. Would you say that after World War II is when the pharmaceuticals and stuff really started pushing for us to kill weeds and started labeling weeds as bad and started pushing these unnatural drugs on people, and it was all for financial gain? I mean, or for some bigger narrative that I'm not seeing. It's almost as if they needed to get rid of chemicals that they had as overstockpile of World War II, so they created weed killer and stuff like that, and almost as if this was all designed to create the havoc that we have today.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like a slow grooming process over the course of many generations. Mm-hmm. And, there's always been chemicals, dark technology, like things manipulating our environment and targeting our food, our resources. But when we recognize we're elemental beings and can like reclaim those inner elementals in order to create the synchronicities to purify ourselves and do it on our own terms so that none of this is like getting in. But it's also population management, right? And this is where a lot of people are caught up in the globalist sort of climate change, like, oh, we're all at fault. But, we're not getting the true history. We're not able to heal as a humanity because the compartmentalization in these systems that are well-intentioned are not seeing the larger picture. And when the larger picture shows up, it's so labeled, it's so smeared, it's so ridiculed, that people don't take it seriously. But they have this false sense of confidence as long as they're being rewarded. Whereas when we want to break through that, it's like a lot of the lingering indoctrination programs would literally like revenge against or like hate the messengers. It's like none of this was easy for any of us to process. So don't get mad at me for trying to tell you that your house is on fire and I'm coming in with an extinguisher and you're mad at me for it. Like you're politicizing it. Like what in the F?
That's something Granny and I've discussed is we've got to get this message out, and we've got to remind our brothers and sisters that are veterans, hey, don't be pissed off, don't be angry. We're all pissed off and angry, but it was people that aren't even alive anymore that made these decisions and put these systems in place, and we need to come from a place of love to change it.
Yeah, well, the heart of that warrior energy that has done that is the greater warrior spirit, because it doesn't matter how much we've been duped. We've all been duped. How many blood, sweat, and tears and deaths have we put ourselves through? Because the inner intention and the reason one was doing it was for the right reasons, right? You can come into a love relationship and come in with all the highest integrity and all it for the right reasons. If the partner, though, is not on the same level, then you get heartbroken, you got to break up, or you lose yourself and become something that you're not. And, the victory is won because of the deeper part of the heart of the vets, the people that fought those wars and put their life on the line, and realizing the later kind of spiritual warfare of, wow, what really was behind this. It almost feels like, are you serious? I sacrificed my life to support some sort of like insanity. It's like, no, that heart warrior spirit is what is rising on the planet right now because of all that we've endured in our past lives, all the wars that have been waged, that we have fought for the right things that now are no longer in battle with each other. It's like, it's just this recognition of they're pitting us against each other big time. And that's not getting us anywhere. I mean, that is why we can't switch on our dormant strands of DNA, because it requires that love. So yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just listening. I'm agreeing because I think a lot of the veterans that are suffering, I think it started World War II. The vets, they just kind of, I think, had an idea, all the bull, but they had such strong love for their families, for America, for what we stood for. And then they came home, and with all the PTSD and the horrible, horrific things that they had to witness or be part of, they used alcohol to deaden that those feelings. So then the Vietnam vets come in, and they have been more vocal. It's like they knew that a lot of them that it was more of a political, but yet they had that instinct, I don't know what else to call it, on America. I'm going to do this because of what my belief system is in America. But when they have found out that that belief system of the leadership wasn't true, what do they do with all of that, And
yeah. I mean, it's sort of like overcoming like heartbreak and the loss of somebody that you were or thought you were in love with. Are you going to beat yourself up? Or are you going to realize like, wow, I actually was a loyal person. I showed up the best person I could possibly be. I invested so much because I believed in this. So even if it failed me, I can respect the fact that I have the capacity within myself to strive for those things in my life, right? So a warrior, somebody going to war that might have been duped, that greater like reason behind it is so much stronger than any form of manipulation, which would have made it something that it's not. So when we face that in love, are we total losers for like not getting it and just being like looping in something, even to the extreme of the battlefield? It's all this, opposition and just deep like suffering and like wounding that is so incredible. And it's carrying that greater intention and knowing that like that holds the test of time. It's stronger than the scenarios or situations that one has been put through. So that ever living warrior, whether it died in World War II, World War One, or any of the wars, is going to reemerge all the wiser and all the stronger, because they are, what it really means to be in service to humanity. And that's why they went to war. If they've been duped, it doesn't matter. When you go into love and you want to love that person, you're being treated like shit. Why is that on that person? Oh, I was just stupid. Like, yeah, we could just be so hard on ourselves. What about, this is the intention I hold, this is what I want to experience, and I was used and taken advantage of because maybe my vulnerability to wanting it so bad didn't give me the discernment to know how to say no. Because it's like they didn't give people a choice when they draft you, right? In the IRS, oh yeah, it's all voluntary. No, they will like come and just be like, please fund our black ops military like mind fuck on humanity. Like, and it's such an assault that a lot of people are waking up to, just like we need to wake up to any nefarious force that we don't want in our lives. Humanity is.
Well, I think about the fact of the COVID shots, that it's getting closer and closer to where half of our nation believes that it is a good thing, and it became to where we don't have our individual rights. And so they are turning on one another and actually, for what I want and what I believe, I'm being punished by the opposition that thinks that it should be. And, it's become, I'm going to turn you in, what do they call it? It's just craziness.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like the battle between the lower self and the higher self, where the higher self has great wisdom to bestow upon a person, right? But they're making choices that are completely out of alignment. And as a humanity, because there's this very well engineered psyop kind of artificial timeline that people have bought into that they think is reality, when they see or face like the antidote or the truth, they're really just like repelled and defensive, because it's like kryptonite. It's like no, that's how far gone like some people are, where the medicine it and it'll take them some time, and at the same time it's like their poison or lack of understanding feels like an infringement upon us, because it's like enough already. And I almost feel like this exchange of energy, if we can take the higher road and not drop down into the divide and conquer, which this is trying to cause, and we can hold love in the face of people making decisions like, oh, they're going to get the jab. It's like, okay, well, let's not let that mean that we'll never talk again. It's this override of the soul deeper mission that we all must step up to amplify the love in the face of it, because that's going to de-weaponize the weapons, because none of these weapons would work without the indoctrination part of it. We know we can shift frequency no matter what we've ingested. Think of all the people that have survived MK Ultra, all the people that have overcome, like being jabbed and being, it's like there's no weapon that is greater than us. It's only the mind control behind it that is going to allow that bioweapon to succeed in digressing you and destroying you.
Well, speaking of, do you have tools that you use to keep from allowing those when they happen? We've taken pictures and they posted them on Facebook when they've had the helicopters fly over that cut electronic equipment and cause migraines and high-pitched sounds, and dogs, cats go nuts, and causes people to spiral into negative attitudes, I've noticed, every time they do this. And try to help others understand when they start, if they can recognize that, if somebody in the group can recognize that, you can keep each other from spiraling down. Yeah. And if you're alone, have you found ways to recognize it when you're alone?
Yeah, because that spiraling down is targeting our wounds and our traumas. and it might just erupt in our personal relationships or just the way we feel about ourselves. It's like such a like personal thing, because in the face of the thing that's trying to take us down is also a doorway into reclaiming something that we've forgotten about within ourselves. So when it challenges us to the point where we create more misery for ourselves, or we believe in it, or because it's just going to come in a sort of form that's going to test our sense of self-worth, or like who we think we are, and this and that, like that's the challenge to embrace. Society, being vampiric and parasitic, is relying on our vulnerability and our unconsciousness, or the part of ourselves that believes in the harder parts of who we think we are, with just guilt, shame, fear, anxiety, and all that. Once we break that relationship and take it to the higher levels, there is probably going to be a lot more opposition manifesting in your life. And if you let yourself get tricked by it to the form of like feeling defeat, you're not going to recognize how huge this battle is, because a lot of these infiltrating forces are not just like 4D, 5D. I mean, it goes back to something so deep in our galactic history that that dynamic is still being played out. So when somebody is rejecting the truther, that's their inner child rejecting something that it's going to eventually have to find within itself, because it doesn't like to be told what to do. There's a certain stubbornness that can be a blessing and it can be a curse. Like when you don't want to take anything in, it's like the indoctrinated people don't want their minds blown open, and the minds that are blown open don't want to be told what to do. So there's a dividing line between like that law of structure, which is Saturn, which has its dark shadow side of tyranny and control, but its higher side is self-mastery and being a teacher, but teaching by inspiration, because you can get over the obstacles and the blocks of life, instead of being so limited by it to the point where you become a tyrannical force that needs everybody to comply with you in order to feel relevant, which is success in the world, the elitist mentality. And
the
it's
illusion.
Yeah, so they're like sort of held to the demonic aspect of Saturn, which is connected to actually the devil archetype in the tarot. But when it's flipped over, when that obsession or addiction to matrix rewards is integrated with its opposite, which is like Cancer, like healing, that dynamic. It's like amazing that the Saturn moon matrix is literally Capricorn Cancer in our astro charts. And when we can see, like in most charts that I see, that is the most wounded aspect of people. Our mother father example has been manipulated, and the planetary grid network dark technologies have created a grid system that through osmosis we pick up on, and we're just living these distortions with a huge part of ourselves not activated. But it's amazing that the higher octaves are part of the trials and tribulations of just living the human experience. But we have to make sense of it from a higher perspective, because the vampiric system, it doesn't care what our belief systems are, as long as there's a problem, reaction, solution, and then a harvest and a siphoning, because that's what the parasitic intellect only knows how to do. And it gets cleverer and more clever when it starts to go into survival, right? So because we're losing a grip on humanity, because it's awakening, it's panicked, because that is the life force it relies on. So it wants to make us feel bad, so we keep giving it to them, when actually they're so scared that we'll like break through the illusion, and they will no longer have a life cycle. So
Well, when you say the parasitic forces, it reminds me of when I was growing up. There were some churches that they preached negative fear and stuff. There would be this black mess that would come down, and you'd see it sucking life force out of people, and people would just start hunching over and getting negative and down and low. And is that kind of what you're describing as far as parasitic type?
Yeah, I mean, it's the minute we're born, I mean, it's cast upon us. So there's a battle between like maintaining our life force and our creative imagination, and feeling it drained, feeling disease, feeling unstable, feeling all the symptoms that are coming at us, like, oh, well, if you don't fit into this certain thing, this is the ailment you have, this is the disease you have. This is like about overcoming all that and realizing those are all frequency distortions that are trying to convince us of something so that we give ourselves away, and they make money off of it and they thrive in their false light persona. And they know the minute you take that away, there's really nothing to sustain them unless they're willing to go into like a whole other process. They've leveraged it because they knew, with all these cataclysms and exploded planets, that we would be a fractured and vulnerable humanity. So all these different seedings of the human race decided, we would come in with a very low template and everything else would be considered scrambled or junk DNA. But it is the chaoticness of the breakdown of the true template of sacred union. So we live it out, calling back all these fragmented parts into wholeness. And compartmentalism in our society and just the belief systems that are cast upon us limit us so much that it loops us in the 3D because we're not integrating. We're not like appreciating each other. It's like we've fallen under like the false guidance system that didn't encourage diversity and harmony. It didn't teach us that. So it's like we have to override that. And when we override that, it starts to lose what it's stolen. And just like a robber, or like an addict, like the minute you're cut off, you're going to freak out. And you're not going to think, oh yeah, I'm going to just heal with you. If that demonic attachment is so strong, it'll take that risk just for the sake of, getting what it needs and wants. And It's very difficult because the empaths like feel it to the point where they're almost like in self-destruction mode because go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no. I was just, is it, okay, you mentioned MK Ultra. Is it almost like MK Ultra, but to everybody, to all of us are experiencing that in some form, like you said. And so when we start to break free from these things that have been planted inside into where, do you find that people that have more than, I guess, the normal person of demonized issues, it's like they're just heavy? Does that make sense? To where they can't even lift their head up. And are those the ones that have, I don't know, potential, a lot of potential, that they're just like pounded on because they know that once they have that release and start to work on getting rid of that, then they become a danger?
Oh, become a danger in what sense?
A danger to the system.
Right. Well, yeah, they don't want us to go into that dark night of the soul because that's, by nature, when it's time to like change or evolve, there is a metamorphic process. Just in the death and birth cycle that we see, but with the just whole like cocoon and a caterpillar becoming a butterfly, but at the same time, the spider can weave you into a web that is the same structure of a cocoon, but you're the victim because the spider is wrapping you up and, and chaining you to its web. But then there's the same silkworm, kind of like the thing that made the cocoon, that is almost like, to me, like the same substance. So the question is, are we being encoiled in a victim consciousness to a predator, or are we in the cocoon to emerge as a butterfly? And death and the whole picture of that and how it corresponds with Scorpio in the 8th house is death, rebirth, alchemy, transformation. If you're stuck in the death cycle, though, if you're trapped in the womb, if you're trapped in the cocoon, or you're starting to poke holes in it because you're not patient enough to go through the transformation, you're going to allow things to come in, which means that it's going to infect what the result is going to be after that cycle. Do you end up like physically dead? Do you end up like a more programmed person? Do you end up in that death cycle being so panicked that you're just reaching out to anything to appease it, or trying to numb it and escape it? Very often it draws like in a magnetic way, like people meant to be in our lives. But Pluto also represents the abuse of power. It's like the abuse of power when it makes like difficult aspects, or the complete and total heartbreak of where you understood that power was a responsibility and somebody didn't have the integrity to walk that path with you on that level, and the trauma that results. And you either match it and become it, right? Like the abused kids, you can either be a handler and do the same thing and pass it along, or you're going to like break free of it. So there's no way to avoid that layer because it exists somewhere. And I don't know if I'm answering your question. I'm
Yes,
like,
you are.
I didn't get a good night's sleep last night, so I'm sort of like, Laura's kind of loopy.
No, you are. Actually, you are. Because I actually don't know anything about Pluto or Saturn or anything. This is my first time in hearing any of this. And
Yeah,
it's
well,
making sense
you don't
to
need
me.
to know that. No, it's like a flower doesn't need to know like this is the name of your leaf on the sign. It's like it doesn't need to read into itself, right? Unless it's nice to like see, okay, all right, just to get a better idea, but you don't really need to know. So it's more the concepts you were talking about. You can relate to the planets, but you don't need to because it's all encoded in nature. Like nature is not broadcasting on the sky. Like, by the way, these angles are happening. We feel it when we're in our authenticity, when we're soul centered. We're impacted by the seasons. We're impacted by maiden mother crone. We're and sacred union, that inner divine template, where it's imbalance, where it's out of balance, where we need to connect. Astrology can just explain sort of that in the background. So we were talking just about death in general, which just happens to be Pluto. And the reason I was like connecting that is because a person can go through a death cycle, but if it's invaded a person, their rebirth might be a lesser version of themselves where there's a disconnect, where somebody else jumped in that initiation you could have had and gained power over the person. So like when a person's like in a life or death situation and they access or seek out an authority that's going to guide them on that journey, that death experience might be labeled or might be projected upon when, just because it was captured in that moment, somebody's making like a long-term diagnosis or label, that the medical industry has been doing to people. Like, you've got this, or you got that, and people are just carrying their afflictions, and you need to be on this drug for life.
Yeah,
Or
that's what I'm talking
the only
about.
thing that level of mind control is insanity. So the Pluto energy, when it's stagnant, attracts viruses, germs, bacteria, like infections. But when it's fluid, with just the process of releasing what doesn't serve you and just moving through the initiations, we have to understand as a humanity, the biggest thing that wants to keep us stuck is the stuff coming at us. So this was a huge opportunity and growth period for humanity in this ascension cycle. And all these different tactics have been to disrupt that plutonic energy so that rebirth would mean almost like a hybridization with the AI and like a false bioengineered person that has lost intuition because they're relying on something to heal the traumas of all that we've gone through as a humanity. I mean, the most well-intentioned people are the ones that are all about climate change and Black Lives Matter. They feel that like division or historical trauma, but we're at a stage where humanity has evolved so beyond us having an issue with each other in that way that it's like beating a dead horse. It's like, didn't we already overcome this? And this is the psychological operations, that are being politicized right now. That is their last ditch attempt to fuck with us, because I don't know. Sorry.
We have a Facebook user that asked, do these parasites serve a purpose or evolution? I always thought that they're forcing us to evolve. I mean, sure, they're parasitic, but do they serve a purpose for evolution?
Right. Well, I mean, it's forcing us to evolve, but it doesn't mean excusing it, right? It's like we can forgive things. more for our own ability to move on than accept things, for what they might have done. I think it's important to feel empowered in the victimhood, but not in a way that doesn't appreciate that we're in an epidemic of victim energy. There's been multiple Holocausts, there's been multiple genocides. And when something tries to raise its victim level above somebody else to, like this white privilege or black life, we've gone through a mixed bag. We have past lives, right? And we're all like hurting on a really deep level. Doesn't matter who we are. The richest person might have had the most abusive and like sick childhood. A white person might have, just been blown away, in the Highlands of Scotland when they were going after the Celts. The African American, like we've all, the Buddhas in the Tibet, look at what they've gone through. It's like we all are like a trauma case that we should not compare and be in competition about. We should just be more loving. It's like maybe your wound is way bigger than mine, but I know a splinter hurts just as bad as a broken leg. Once we're wounded enough, we should have more unity and mutual love and support than victim consciousness and like blame and chosen ones, or I'm the bigger victim and we need attention. Like that's the threshold I think we're all on, is breaking that, because that is influencing every sector of our society right now. And that's what trends and, political things are leveraging. Like, what is the trend?
Yeah. What about, you mentioned earlier about our children? To me, children are innocent. And so here we have all these children that are being taken, trafficked, and I won't go into detail on what I believe is happening to them, but something is happening. And so, I've always, when I'm sharing about what I'm going through, there's always somebody that's going to come back and say, well, I got this going on. And, it becomes like this contest. And I never realized it except for maybe after I turned over 40, that I started to notice this bigger thing on the negative the trauma gets bigger.
Well, there's I don't like that word, but there's a dependency bond where, you keep reinforcing it and then you seek ways to medicate it, but you're still in this loop and spiral of, not understanding like there's the temporary discomfort, but like at that point, the warrior energy should step in instead of, and I've done this, like where I excuse myself because of that ex. It's like, oh my God, he just freaking destroyed me. And that's why I can't function. And I'm like, wow, I like literally, I'm like a vet looking back at a war and feeling like, why in the F did I fight that war when all it left me was injury? When I put my best foot forward and I believed in it and I was the best I could possibly be, that level of betrayal on a worldly level of just being born here and just doing our best to survive our own childhoods. And then to like see that the greater authority of the planet is a complete and total evil, inverted, nasty, like preying upon the good intentions of everybody to cause like this wound that needs to be addressed, because unaddressed wounds you either act out, and or you manifest a disease. So as far as like the children you're talking about, and like, the innocence, is the preying upon that because they don't have innocence, right? So if we see in just fairy tales or some entities like Drax or Dracula, it's the whole seduction thing where she's actually like happy that her neck's being bit and she's like, oh, right, know, it's that sort of personified version of that is the hooks that humanity morphs into to become a different entity. So there's a positive side to it and a negative side, because it seems everybody's seeking that fountain of youth, or that immortality. And so these beings that I feel have fallen are relying on the ignorance and the amnesia of individuals that really hold the foundation of what it means to be a starseed or an advanced soul or like in a higher dimensional thing. And they're here to activate the ones that don't think that are actually buying into the thing that's battling them or targeting them. So if we can look at the people that we want to wake up without casting the ones that have influenced them as enemies and understanding they've been MILABs or mind control, they might be Manchurian candidates, they're not in possession of themselves, then we can just toss out the script and unify in a greater healing way where there's going to be more deprogramming, there's going to be more recovery from these things than a complicit medical industry that says, oh, those are false memories, or oh yeah, you need to take Resifar or whatever and be on a ventilator because these are the people that are weakened by this parasitic force, the vampire that bit into their neck where they're like, oh, it feels good because I'm getting paid. It's a vampiric sick system.
Yeah. Somebody had wrote, well, what about ego? How is this, because what just explained to right now sounded to me like it's all about ego. So that's what a person had wrote in the comments.
Well, it's easy to, yeah. The ego, especially if it's traumatized or damaged or didn't get the love, the greater rewards of what society can bring can really target that vulnerable person that has not healed or found a greater abundance in nature or in Mother Earth or seeing a bigger picture, because none of this is in our school systems. And I joke about it, like, do we really go to third class galactic history and then yoga and then planting seeds in the ground and learning how to? No, it's just a bunch of ridiculousness, really. There's no real education. And so when we take it upon ourselves to tap into, these other levels, it places a huge responsibility upon ourselves, not just to figure out how to move through the obstacles that want to censor or diminish it in manifesting it for ourselves. It's trying to get that bigger message out there. I'm sorry, I've lost track of your conversation, but
no, you haven't actually.
You're okay. No worries.
You haven't. I'm listening very closely. So yeah, you're doing great. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Let me ask you, Laura. I know a lot of veterans don't believe that they can come forward and tell their stories, even though the disclosure is happening and they're asking people to come forward to tell their stories. But as you stated, not saying what you've seen and what you've experienced, holding on to it can cause you to have those demons. How do we encourage them to understand that fear is causing them to be even sicker and that it's going to be for their best interest to talk?
I think their higher self is totally there, but they might have felt like it wasn't enough to protect them from the injuries and the trauma and the confusion that they're processing right now. And without having enough available resources of people that understand that are not leveraging it, not using it, not, that can see this larger picture. It's just kind of like, I did an interview with a woman who's like a healing vets with horses and the communication with the horses and tracking the progress of that individual based in the way that the horse is like treating you or reacting to you. And this one vet, his son commits suicide, and it was like a double whammy. It was just like, with his own injuries and his own trauma, like losing his son that, is caught up in this other kind of warfare that we're dealing with. And, I think it's just so freaking painful that the tendency is, oh, I don't want to share. That's too much. I shouldn't put it all out there. And the other tendency is, oh, well, if you reveal all this, then, it's going to come with criticism. And it's why it's like so cool sometimes to see like a celebrity just like become completely undone and just be like, I'm calling it all out. And they're, it's so much better than I'm on the red carpet and getting pictures taken of me. It's like, no, there's no facade that should be held up anymore. Like everybody have a meltdown, have a breakdown, love each other for it. And let's reawaken to the greatest priority that is staring us in the face right now, to protect the future generations that are relying on us as parents, as elders. Whether we have kids or not, we are able to tap into that template within ourselves to be guardians. and people that can't have kids, it's like, well, you're a mother to like the whole planet, and like maybe this didn't make sense for you to be like, let's not labelize things. All these experiences are messy as hell, but when we exist in a society that's going to label it and like have a diagnosis or a pill for it, we miss out on that greater shamanic kind of inner work where we bust through the gatekeepers. We see the blessing in the adversity. We see the blessing in that physical symptom. It's like, oh, my fire just wanted to express itself. I was like holding on to it. Or, yeah, I was told to shut up. So my throat chakra, it's like that greater unconditional love of creator, and the Bibles and all the, programming, even to somebody that didn't buy into it, is very much the lowly sinner and answering to an outer authority that will punish you. And we have been so effed with that we got to remember the unconditional love of creator knows a lot of our suffering and struggles were just because we were picked on in our vulnerable times, and we were just seeking that love that we want to feel with source energy. But society has robbed us from reminding us. And that's the treasure of like children when they first come in. They are our guides. They're coming, through with something really important. And we got to help to protect them from the things that are going to try and take it away. And it's getting worse. So, it's sort of like when it's getting worse, when you're watching a movie and then you realize this is so B-rate, this is so fucking like glitchy. And, like...
Absolutely. So we're coming up on an hour. I know I told you we were going to go as long as you wanted, and that's up to you if you want to keep going or want to wrap it up. I know you have a lot of stuff that you're up to, and I want to give you time to talk about that too. So I didn't know if you want to stay with us for more than an hour or end at an hour. It's up to you, Laura.
Well, I really am happy to be here, and I would miss you guys. If I hung up right now, I was just like, oh man. So if there's anything else, I know I'm just like blah blah blah.
No. We wanted to go over an hour, but we didn't have time to talk before. Oh, yeah. So that's why I'm asking.
Because
I noticed that you've got an alien event coming up in Las Vegas that Mike, our producer, put in there. What are you going to be doing with that?
Oh, just a reminder of like all that we are, and like no matter how harsh anything is, that keeps us in a loop or a vibrational feeling. We can absolutely change it. I just think we're learning to find more reassurance within ourselves that what seems to be reality, or what might be that like reality check, or what might be showing up in your reality that becomes a reality because it hurts you or injures you, that this is part of the greater training ground to access aspects of ourselves that have not really been online for quite some time. And that's where I feel like we were talking about earlier, where it doesn't excuse the adversity, it doesn't make it okay, but it's like literally like pushing us, and it's almost like the contractions that are creating like a rebirth. But I don't want to say it like that, like I did with the cocoon. Like over processing things, like, and this is the thing with nature, it's like people are like, oh yeah, be vegan, this and that, and like, it's like I look at it more, everybody's different. You have a different blood type, and whatever your body tells you you need. And it's like, oh no, you can't eat them. But if you look at the nature channels, lions are devouring other animals. Like we're in, sort of but the fear of death, the program that humans hold, and I'm not saying like it needs to be this victim predator like kind of relationship, but people's concern with other people's lifestyle and way of living, we have to see all aspects of the multidimensional. And if you're wired for this or that, can we appreciate the differences of it instead of being like, oh my God, I can't believe you do that. This diversity and harmony to me is the oneness, and the greatest weaponization is it's beyond political. It comes down to, the choices we make. Once you land in truth, I don't feel it needs to defend itself. It's not insecure, right? When I started eating healthy, I didn't come into McDonald's and be like, what the fuck is wrong with you guys? I just didn't go there anymore. And I'm glad. But then the McDonald's person might be pissed because there's a health food store that wants to make changes in their way of creating food. And they're like, no, because we make more money, like tricking people. It's all available to people. this
Right.
greater like medicine. And the ones that are staying in that low vibration, whether it's in their thoughts or mentality or just working somewhere and compromising themselves, there has to be a full-on upgrade. And I noticed, going to airports, you can get a lot more like healthy snacks and this and that. So that's a clear sign. There's a lot of clear signs.
I've noticed it's difficult to travel. I have to eat a very clean diet. My body is so sensitive. I can't go to the major supermarkets because they irradiate the food, and my body I have to have twice as much, and it still makes me sick. So I have to go to the local market, get the local grown food, and it has to be all natural. And I have to eat to my blood type, like you said. It's and if you start eating clean, then when you go to eat fast food or something, I notice that makes my emotions and thoughts, everything just spiral.
I know, I noticed that too. I was having a total meltdown. I'm like, fuck it, I'm gonna have a Big Mac, and because I'm gonna die anyway, right? It's like
Right?
go out with a celebration. And I'm like, yeah, this is it, and French fries, everything, and oh my god, but I'm like, no, and it was sort of a catalyst. And that's what we're always facing. The greatest gift to ourselves is like understanding what it means to have unconditional love for ourselves, and find like the hilarity of it all. But the fact is, it's like our resistance to our own healing power and our own, energies. It's amazing how much we resist that gift. When we do are faced with the choice, and I just think this is the way we're gonna, turn everything around, because we have a choice between the health food store or the, but we also might resent it because why is that more expensive? That's like $1.99, and that's like $15 just to get like a cacao chocolate thing with green food. Oh my god, it's like costing a fortune. But it's amping up like the self-worth and just the lifestyle that, like, even if it's hard to make it happen, you're investing it. That's where you're putting your money into, because if you're putting your money into the lower vibrational things to just cope, this is the hugest step, because trauma, I just feel like, really gets in the way. That's what's, being utilized. And I just really, pray for all of it stepping up more. I know we kind of drifted into this metaphor about fast food and how that connects to spirituality, but it's just, I guess, my point, which is like the long way home to my point, which could be like put in one sentence, is just, it's amazing. Like, when we're triggered, do we grab something that is healing, or do we grab something that is all about escapism or trashing the self because it believes that the reason the adversity showed up is something personal? And I know we all have to turn the sword on ourselves, and we don't want to be victims either, but we need to see the mutual exchange of energy and the wisdom it provides to be inspired to make that healthy choice, then beat ourselves up, which I'm really good at doing to myself. I'm always hard on myself.
Speaking of healthier choices, something that the VA does not offer is healthier. They don't have doctors that will tell us what herbs or stuff to take when we're sick. So for veterans that are looking for the more natural and holistic route, what would you tell us to tell our fellow veterans to do, what to look into, or what type of doctor to look into?
Well, this has been my life mission and journey, and I just posted on Rumble an interview with Dr. Lucky, and I think he's in Mississippi or Minnesota, one of the he only booked 2 weeks out, and he does everything like frequency. He's like top level kind of doctor, and it relates to everything that I've ever come to know in my own life. So the reason I started to learn astrology is because I wanted to understand the medical part of it. Like, if there's a squared aspect of major tension between like these planets, and a person was born in this particular family or time in history, like what is, like, how can we like make sense out of it, right? So when I work with like abductees or vets or really traumatized people, and see the full picture, and see like where are the antidotes to the injury, which we all hold, right? But if we don't realize that and we hand it over to somebody else outside of ourselves, we miss out on integrating into like these parts of ourselves that are actually reminding us in this time of adversity to access it. And so we're just being fooled and tricked in those moments of initiation, of trauma, like anything. It's not, doesn't make it right, doesn't make it fair. But in those moments, it's like, wow, okay, I better pull in more of me so it would never happen again. And that greater warrior energy is going to dismantle it on an even higher level, which is you and your audience, right? And all of us that are like the vet consciousness that have been fighting every war under the sun, knowing, you know, your heart was in the right place and you were doing it for the right reasons. That is, to me, the ascension energy, where the soul intent and truth of who that being truly is defies you know, the labels and the storylines and the things that, you know, we just, so I, you know, the herbs like skullcap, chamomile, passion flower, kudzu, you know, I like, I'm loaded up with herbs. Like I've been taking my sleepy night and it's got like all sorts of things, skullcap, hops, just really soothing the nervous system, because the nervous system, when it has anxiety, has messages, right? It wants
Right.
to, it needs to express. Because just like if we have like bad food, our body's going to purge, right? It's going to throw up, right? So when our thought forms, when we get downloads and we're not spewing it, which is a lot better than throw up, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we're not releasing it, it's informing everything within the body. So if the thought form doesn't have a means of expression, the mind will gravitate to the narrative or the propaganda or the ancestral pattern, where the elementals in their shadow side, like anger means you're passionate about something. Depression means you have a soul longing, right? It's in your emotions. You know, your confusion in your mind means that you probably realize that what you've been taught might be questionable. And then the fire element of just like, who do I take it out on? Like, where do I put my life force? And so yeah, we just got to get a grip on ourselves, because our inner elementals, in this ascension window period, which is proven by the fact that the sun started to move through the 13th sign of Fiacus, which is the ether energy, which purifies all the elementals, which connects to the platonic solids and the nucleic acids in our DNA. So the fact that, you know, the inversion, sort of the more satanic Baphomet, has been corrected by the Venus transits. As of 2010, the sun actually moved into a Theicus. So all these like idealisms that I had, I'm like, oh yeah, you know, the ascension's coming. I need like, all right, it doesn't feel like it. Like I started to study this stuff and it completely lines up. So this is the true reality. Just like we have a truth within ourselves. How much are we willing to embody it and live it? And how much are we going to play along with the facade? And the minute we have the courage to break free of all that, we're going to see the world, you know, change. And I still got a lot in me that has come through just growing more, that I didn't expect to like revisit, that I'm like completely blindsided by. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, so it's maintenance. It's not you arrive and, you know, and there's so much promoting that like negative ego. And a lot of them have handlers and a lot of them are placed in certain positions in society to then, you know, show the weak points, because it's all glitchy. Everything's glitchy except for our truth and our soul. And everybody's going to wake up at their own speed. And do we need to like stress because of, you know, what we're witnessing? Once we drop the fear of death, it doesn't matter, right?
Well, then how would we go about obtaining this? What would be like for me, who absolutely doesn't know anything about this? How would I start? I mean, I have a lot of the things that you were mentioning. So how do I start on fixing this?
So you being true to you, when you notice that something in your life is not in resonance to it, that you don't spend much more time with that, you know, person. It's sort of like, you know, customer service. It's like you're dealing with an asshole. It's like, excuse me, I'd like to talk to somebody else. Like I'm just, you know, there's more options, right? Sometimes we confine ourselves to what we think is going to be our reality or our destiny, or like, is it always going to look like this? Is it always going to be this way? That's more like the chronic sort of like biofeedback, where it just keeps reinforcing something. And then we see it and validates it. And it's so hard to get out of, those kind of loops. And I'm in some loops right now, which I'm really surprised by, because I'm like, I know better. So what's interesting about the progress charts, it just kind of shows like the new energies coming in, right? So I could always like look at your chart. But it's like acclimating. When you move into a new house after you had to let go of the old one, and a lot of your energy is still in the old house, you're just maybe going to resent or feel like really weird about like adjusting. We get transplanted into different things, but if we mistake the adversity behind it, or the breakthrough, or the reason to do something, we'll cast a negative almost spell on ourselves to not appreciate what it really wants to show us. I just feel like a lot of the transitions in my life, like when I was holding on to like what I had before, or like what I wanted, I could not like be as creative and positive to the new situation that the universe, like through synchronicities, like brought me to. I was too much in my head analyzing it, and like judging myself, and like, or just feeling like, oh, well, you did this to me, and I'm like, there's got to be a certain point where we appreciate that dialogue, but that dialogue just sort of turns into, you want to have trust and faith in yourself. That's the ultimate, I think, form of self-love. We can love ourselves and be like, my hair. It's like, obviously I don't care about my hair. That kind of love, but this greater love and respect for, in those situations, can we be real enough with ourselves and each other to know why, like, you might be having a hard time when you're supposed to be strong for everybody else, or you should know like how not to be in that space. So I think if there are more honest conversations about it, and the fact that it's part of the seasons, you don't see the tree freaking out when it's winter. Oh my God, my leaves are gonna fall. It's just like,
that's true.
It's a time of death. Is a time of, there's a time for everything. But when we overanalyze it, and not appreciate like the gift that it gives, we can like be really stuck. And when that new birth happens, like just like that infiltrated caterpillar, when it comes out the butterfly, it's like, well, it's not at its fullest potential. But if it can master the forces that compromised it, that infected or harmed its DNA, that it would be able to regenerate. And in these secret space programs, they're able to regenerate people's limbs and bring them back to life. So our consciousness is the greatest technology that they've mimicked in order to have control. So within ourselves, it doesn't matter, what damage we're holding on any level. We have to know that nature provides the alchemical transformative flow. And on the planet, since the sun started to move through Ophiuchus, this is what really marked this as a profound window period for like a greater awakening. But that is when they ramped up everything to play upon what they've groomed people to think and believe ever since the 1940s and 50s, the hippie movement, even just like all these revolutionary things that are still like, and all these race wars. It's like the awakening is about the fact like we're all one, and diversity and harmony, and whatever's being fed to us, it's like, and that's why it's turning into the worst B-rate movie, because now it's not conspiracy, it's motherfucking common sense. And it's that instinct too. But yeah, what does the picture look like if people keep going down this road? Assimilation into AI? Does that turn your physical vessel into a gray alien? Is that why they're abducting, to get their genetic material back? Because in these times of bioweapons, it's not the weapons that are going to kill you, it's the beliefs that you bought into, right? And right. That's what I've seen a lot of transformation with people that are like, oh, I used to be a gray, and now they're like a human, whether it was a hybridization thing. But yeah, I'm a galactic multidimensional mess as far as like right now.
Now, what about different planes or not planes, dimensions? Do people actually go to different dimensions and can gain wisdom or knowledge or lessons? Or
absolutely. Well, all the time. We go into the dream realm, right? The dream realm and the realm of reality is similar to the veil between life and death, right? People live their lives, they fear death. People live in a reality, but they have their dreams. Where our dreams capable of being in reality? Well, we have nightmares. We have some dreams we wouldn't want to manifest, right?
Right.
What needs to be done when we visit those realms to clear that energy so that when we are in the physical plane, we're manifesting things that don't hold, any attachments, to anything else. So
Right.
the massive targeting of humanity has been the targeting of the creative imagination, that Neptune energy, that and then the physical that's encoded with the distortions, or is just trying to like reconcile it. And it's only through these sort of death experiences or tragedies that we can step back enough to determine within ourselves, is this something I can dig deeper into about myself, or you're just going to give that power away? And so I think it's a meeting of the minds where the medical industry is not all bad. Thank God for a lot of all that they've done. But the conscious, healer within all of us needs to be given more attention and more co-creation with it, instead of the sort of tyrannical, like, you need to do this and this is how long you'll live. It's like, what about appreciating the whole person? And so I think if like medical astrology, was included in things, or just frequency and energy and understanding ancestral patterns and understanding that all these genetic damages people either inherited or like contracted or have been infected by, it would just be a greater approach to help us to return to ourselves, because all of it's showing up to bring us back to ourselves, but they are taking advantage of it in perpetuating that moment that you might have cleared with the guidance of your higher self, or somebody reminding you of your higher self, versus somebody being like, you need to take this drug and this is what's wrong with you. So that's going to take a bit, saying this kind of stuff. I got banned from life from YouTube, and it's so simple and obvious
Stuff that you can look up and go down rabbit holes and find on your own if you research enough. Because I watched all your videos, and your videos led me to Dr. Charnel, who's our next guest. And that's how I started finding answers and realizing that a lot of my illness was psychological trauma that I never dealt with, never spoke about, never handled. And thus it got stored in my body and created illness. And so is the medical astrology, is that pretty much what it's saying, is most of the illness is related to either parasitic or psychological?
Yeah. It's all the stuff that you needed to like survive through, but you might not have caught up and processed. It's sort of like, it's like too much to reflect upon and just like put it over there. But then, our society is not encouraging us to heal from our previous lifetimes and just like see what our challenges are in this lifetime. And there's no real like nurturing of the soul journey. Only the ego journey. Is it positive or negative? Are you a success or are you a failure, and this and that? So outside of like all of that, when somebody's being really honest with their process and have physical symptoms, most of the time it's these water elements that take on everything and are healing things through their body. Like, because you're so awake that like most of the things that are kind of contending with you in your physical body is like you like really on the front lines and like winning this war within yourself, because some of the ancestral stuff or societal stuff that might have like gone in there is meeting its match, with you, but it's like things are going to show up. I mean, same with me. Like I see the larger picture, like I know it, right? But like sometimes in the humanness of it all, when it's really like aggravating me, I just kind of want like somebody to make it better outside of myself. And when it's so lodged as an ancestral pattern or something you just can't explain and you can't go to the source of it within your own family and or like find somebody that can understand it, like if it's that sort of like deeply embedded, it's such a like huge blessing that you have the sensitivity to experience it, because you might have other family members that it's like me. It's like, so my anxiety disorders and everything that's wrong with me. Well, I took a very different path, and it comes with the ramification that I need to accept. The physical symptom is I don't want to be seen. I'm like really shy. I got social anxiety disorder, but yet I'm a public person, right? So that's going to create a schism that I want to relieve somehow. But if I didn't target the reasoning behind that discomfort and just be transparent about it, I wouldn't be able to heal it. So your self-honesty is the medicine. And just knowing, like whatever has come up. Yeah, I mean, the astrology can like, really point it out. Like I've seen unbelievable things of like, and just how, coming into this physical experience, like, it's the whole shebang. It just shows everything. And these are all your gifts. Like anything that's like feeling wounded in you is because something's afraid of that part of yourself shining and putting itself out there. And in their own resistance, they acted out their own demonic or some indoctrinated control. That's why I think empaths and like starseeds, you're the family member where your parents take everything out on you, like, or you're just like the dumping ground, right? Because they know you can handle it somehow, right? It's like,
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am. Now, somebody had a question about, Mike, can you put that back up there on, is AI demonic question, avatars question?
it's the consciousness behind everything. We all have tools, right? I can pick up this tincture I have, and I could either like have it, or I could just throw it across the room and like make it break and like create a big ruckus. Like we are the consciousness behind physicality, and even behind the AI. So the AI is okay. It's convenient, and like thanks for the AI, and it's important in certain medical scenarios, perhaps. Uh, in this free will universe, the ego learned to mimic nature and create technology. But we are the greater technology. What is the consciousness behind the technology being used is the question. So there's good AI, there's not good AI. It's the whole, like, how can something outside of ourselves, when we look in the mirror, mess with us to assimilate us into a falsity or reflect back to us our truth? And that comes down to us. So AI is no threat if you're on the path of being authentic and true to yourself. But you'll notice, if you are participating or accepting that AI world, how much it's trying to disconnect you. So be that override frequency. I mean, we can't negate technology, but what the Atlantis Lemuria scenario, the Holocaust of Lemuria and the Atlantean cataclysms and Anunnaki exploded Maldek and like everything. We're like rebuilding something like really huge within ourselves. And
Okay.
and the fact that we might be able to self-reflect on it means that we might not have to repeat this over and over. And as long as we need to repeat it, let's not worry about it. Like when I F up, I'm super hard on myself, but then there's like this other part of me that is a lot more gentle with myself. Like I don't need to be anybody for anyone. I'm just wanting to be me for the world and come from my heart. But I can't like convince people of this or that because I wouldn't want to. I'm like all about like, what does it mean to just be the fullness of all that you possibly are, and don't be afraid, to question anything. And it's just the reunion and the excitement that comes with the permission to just fully be you.
Okay.
We don't have any answer over one another, but we can unwind from the targeting of the tree of knowledge, which turned into mind control. And like, okay, if humans need to seek knowledge to integrate the polarity of good and evil, let's bombard them with nothing but mind control and narratives and psyops and false flags.
Propaganda.
Like, and it's just like, and then we have amnesia, and it's like, but at the same time, that rude awakening, when it just gets to that point where there's nowhere left to go than to rescue your treasures. And I feel like no matter what kind of death, whether it's you got hit by a car, you die of a disease, you commit suicide, it's all like self-induced. That's why like when people put a negative spin on suicide, which I would not encourage, of course, because you still have more to do, but like respecting that soul. It's the same kind of soul that did it in a long and drawn out process of self-destructive habits and not taking care of the human vessel. Maybe that inner angst where you can't speak up, so you just look for comfort food and comfort things, that make you unwell when you're really like an awakened being that needs to say something. So we need to accept the physical and embrace it as our teacher, overriding all the teachers that have been put in our face growing up. Because the body,
Now,
like, I'm in pain, I got something to tell you, is all it's saying. And it knows exactly how to heal us. But if we don't locate the root of it, sorry, go ahead. You were going to say something.
So you mentioned the soul.
Crazy train
You know,
right now. Sorry, guys.
You're okay. One of our Facebook users asked, "Are souls non-gender?" Since you brought up souls, that's a good question.
yeah.
Soul's masculine and feminine. We come into the body. I was in a female body, but I definitely like identified more with my masculine. I was like the total tomboy, just like. But I had to shield myself a lot from like the Barbie world and like the high school thing. Like, I was so uncomfortable in my body most of my teenage years. Because if I were to be a woman, it should look like this or that. And I'm like much more like Tonka trucks and like, and when I cut all my hair off when I was a kid, because my sister put gum in my hair and people couldn't tell if I was a boy or a girl, it was like the best day of my life because I would just hang out with the dudes and they thought that I was like their bro and we'd like just have the best time, right? I went to this one YMCA camp and I was just like, these guys are my friends and we're just having fun and we're just like, we went on these field trips in these creeks. And then one day my mom came and picked me up. She's like, Laura. And they're like, Laura? Because they thought my name was Chris. They weren't too happy. They were like, oh my God, it's a girl. Like, so the fact that it shocked them is like, well, why is that even an issue that I can hang with you? Like, I am in touch with that part of me than myself, but I still have to deal with, this whole female body. And I understand like how difficult that is for our society and for humans because there's been so many distortions and confusions and the integration of polarity has not been taught. Like your inner masculine and feminine, like, all right, if I'm going to get in this body, this is my vessel and my inner masculine is going to be a warrior to protect it. And, but it's not like a body that society tells me it should be where, the objectification of it all, or like the lack of self-worth or having to fight to be able to vote. Like I'm not in the matrix and what men have gone through, like losing their limbs in war and being taught not to cry and being, like ridiculed for getting in touch with their inner feminine. Like it's been such a war zone with all that. So I guess, and I'm hoping to express in my book, like I can understand like identifying with an energy that is not, feminine. Well, what does that mean? I'm not in a Barbie strawberry shortcake. I don't understand all that, but I don't judge it. But I'm more interested in this. Does that mean anything about my physical body? I need to learn my physical body because it's been programmed to think that it's not worthy of some kind of love because I'm not fitting into the standard of what it means to be a woman or a man. So I feel like, almost rebellious in the sense of, bring out like my masculine side and honoring deeply within the masculine their ability to have sensitivity and total connection with the mother. Like if we can validate that about ourselves and we understand that we are like masculine and feminine, let's just accept the vessel that, God gave us. And if it's that brutal, yeah, there's technologies that will help to make it better and easier. But let's not make those kind of huge decisions when we're children. It's the only thing I feel.
I agree with that. I totally agree with that. And that you're the first person that's ever said that in my entire life, because I had mentioned at one point to my sister, and we were just all talking, and I said, the man in me thinks this way, and she totally freaked out. Like, what is that even supposed to mean? And I'm like, what do you mean? What does that mean? And, because to me, it was like my role in life as a child was, yes, I'm a girl, but I identified by wanting to do the boy things. They were much more fun things to do.
Right.
And so then as I got older, it was more of, well, now I was put in the position, I was the man of the house.
Mhm.
You know, that whole identity was put on me. And so, you know, to me, just saying that felt natural because that's how, you know, I guess my little programming was on, you know, I felt more, I don't know, I just enjoyed having playing with the guys, the football and, you know, tomboy. I say to my friends now, they would probably be saying she needs to be a boy because I did everything that the boys did.
The craziness of it. What does it mean to be feminine? Like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna be some like kind of Barbies. Like, great, all you Barbies that want to be Barbies, do that.
Does that?
But
Yeah.
like, you know, and same thing with the masculine. Like, we all have our, you know, different patternings or ancestral patterns, but like breaking that all down. Like, I just love that my partner is like way more like the feminine energy, like cooking and like this and that. And I'm like warrior, like, you know, it's very much my masculine energy, but I'm not letting that confuse me about the body I've been given. Like, I look in the mirror, I'm not like happy with what I see, but it has nothing to do with being confused. I have the warrior spirit, I have the masculine, I have the feminine, and I want them to be in love because that's how we switch on dormant DNA, is that our right and left hemispheres, our electric and magnetic energies within ourselves are supporting one another in union with one another. So you can just be yourself in the moment. You might pull out like your masculine side, you might pull out your feminine side. It's just like the I Ching. It's got the receptive and the creative. You know, creative, more masculine, receptive, more about the womb and giving birth. Like, let's just get back to the nature of ourselves. We don't have to be confused by anything. Yeah, it's like, you know, when we drive a beater car, it's like, yeah, it'd be nice if it was a different kind of vehicle. But it's like, what is the consciousness behind what's driving it and what it sees for itself and what it can accomplish? I don't know.
I've always wondered if the caduceus, the medical symbol that has the two snakes on either side, if that's actually representing the masculine and feminine, and then that is the spine, our spine, that it's going up, because when you activate that Kundalini energy, you feel that spiral going up your spine.
Yep, and it's cool that that symbology like even exists, you know, and people, you know, the whole Genesis story of like Adam and Eve and the serpent is very much about the Kundalini, and the Kundalini tricking a person would just be the mind control connected to the sexual misery programs and all the programmings that have, you know, kept this divide between the masculine and feminine, the electromagnetic, you know, with the Saturn moon matrix, dark technologies. And so that duality, you know, turn the serpent into the bad guy, into the demon, into the devil. But, you know, there's both sides of that serpentine energy. There's that lower octave of the maybe reptilian negative ego, but then there's the dragon, there's the Kundalini, like you're saying. We're rebuilding the Tree of Life template. And so the trickery of us not being able to fully understand it or embody it is that confusion about the snake, but yet it shows in the medical thing, but we're not seeing it.
Yeah.
Just like the Nazi symbolism used to be connected to the lost civilization of Mu. It's like, go ahead.
I apologize. You were mentioning the snake, and we were talking about symbology. Something popped up in my mind that Granny and I were actually talking about earlier this week that we've discovered recently is if you look at symbology in the Bible and it talks about the serpent and the apple. I've learned that those entities or those beings that have negative entities attached to them smell like green apples or Jolly Green Ranchers. And then those that are of the air smell like sulfur or a lit match. Yeah.
God, you have very psychic nasal passages.
Girl, I see, hear, smell. It's my life has been crazy, and it's amazing the evidence my husband and I have started collecting over the years, and the links that we're starting to make and everything, and it's really something pretty cool.
Now, Michael, can you put up that last question up? It goes by and I don't read it because, okay. Can you touch on Christ consciousness?
Yeah, I think we enter Christ consciousness when we understand the symbology within ourselves and not externalize it too much, right? Like death of the ego, like, you know, things on the outside that don't understand like the truth of who we are, you know, being willing to stand for something and be persecuted for it is where we survive on a spiritual level. And I feel the Christ consciousness that has been symbolized as like, death, resurrection, crucifixion, and ascension, is just nothing to take from the outside as much as we need to take it from the inside. And there's a lot of distortions and a lot of biblical tests because the greater teachings of the Essenes, that has to do with alchemy. It has to do with like not rules and laws being placed upon things, but it's more in connection with nature and like what that has to teach. So there's just a lot of distortion, and in order to correct it, we need to understand like what that life was really intent on. And I think the Magdalene piece and the Sophionic piece is what humans have missed out on to like learn from, is that sacred union, that hierogamic union, the fact that like nature royalty, different than reptilian inverted royalty that is just vampiric, the nature royalty, those in these advanced civilizations like Avalon and, everything was about the sacred union, the planetary grid network, the Guinevere, the Arthur, the Christ, the Sophia, the Magdalene, the Yeshua, and that is the love story that is in our genetic code that is being tampered with in order to not create that level of reunion. So I feel the Christ consciousness is that love supersedes everything. And this greater union that probably seeded a lot of like individuals that would be able to be the activators, because everybody's got this. It's just, it might be more dormant or more, there might be a thicker wall and you can't find the key to the lock to get in, that other people would remind you to help you open it up. Because our true origins, we're not the beings after the Anunnaki that are just, stupid humans that are just feeding into the system. It's like our true source energy is what we want to reclaim and be reassured by. And I'm just floating. I'm sorry, doing it again.
No, you're
I think you're flowing into opening up more conversation. I'm loving it because it's making sense to me anyway.
Right. But it's like the discord, right? We feel with our friends and our partners, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a growth period. If we're in the we don't understand like the reasons behind the adversities, it's like, as much as I don't want to like bring up video games, you continue to be challenged to get to the next level, and the next level is harder. But like, what is it training you to do? Oh, if you can handle that, you can handle this. And if you can't handle that, you're just going to start from scratch and try again, right? So the fact that I reflect upon this metaphorically to video games, when I'm like much more about nature, there is a part of our intellect that is such a thing with us that makes us a bit different than like animals. It's like they're just doing their thing. They're probably not sitting there processing like a squirrel's like, man, I really wish I was a cat or a dolphin, or like, what am I doing? Like, why am I storing all these acorns? Like, we've been given like so much access to questioning, to exploring, to experiencing, like what is our natural instinct versus what are we being commanded or told to do? Whereas the natural world just knows what it's doing. Mm-hmm. And it's a gift and it's a curse. So
it's because of the programming we endure from the moment we're born that we forget what we're supposed to do and how to do it naturally. That's what I've found. I've found watching animals in nature and how they treat themselves and each other helps myself love myself more, because I understand that I'm just another animal. Just because I put on clothes don't make me any different than my animals that are in my house or outside in the wild.
Yeah, and even if oh God, what is that creature called? The insect that bites off the other person's head. Mantids. When we see the harshness in nature, right?
Right.
There's more neutrality because it's completely surrendered to source. It doesn't fear death. It might be a little nervous, like when the bunny rabbit or the, it's like, oh, there's a predator coming. But at the same time, it's like, it just keeps regenerating. Like everything dies in the winter and it comes back in spring and like full on abundance. It's like, there's not that fear of death. That to me when we talk about ascension, is acknowledging that nature is reflecting to us what we're made of.
I love your analogy with the video games. It's actually more current than the all the world's a stage that Shakespeare used. I mean, it's actually will help those that are younger relate better to what's going on in the world around them. If they look at the video game and take this outside into their bigger picture of their life, they can see, oh, wait, I'm doing the same thing. Life is just a video game, just being learning lessons and progressing.
And it's going to throw you more challenges when you completed a challenge. It's like, oh, well, if you're really that smart, try this one out, right? And sometimes we're like, fuck you, I'm so exhausted, I don't want to play any more games. And that, is like game over. And finding acceptance in that, like every level of the game. Because if we're invested in it, something's always going to challenge us. And it's going to pull out our strength or our feelings of defeat. I mean, I don't know how many times I played Pac-Man until I got to like the 4th level, 5th level, Tetris, like the whole like 9 levels, like, and I'm just like, argh! And it's sort of a metaphor for me. But I don't like to refer to, but you're rewarded for being speedy or like did that, and then like, and no, I just Tetris I beat actually Tetris, and that's actually rare. I beat the whole game 9th level when all the bricks are falling down really fast and there's all these obstacles. I was just like, and I was pregnant at the time, but it took me forever, right? Like, this is the thing. People give up on themselves too quick. Like, oh, I can't do that. I can't accomplish that. Like, are you kidding me? Like, that big obstacle is total permission for you to challenge yourself like you never thought you could.
Have love and grace for yourself as well.
Yeah, because the only thing that builds muscle is the willingness to face an opposition. So in our own minds, when we talk ourselves out of ourselves or we're hard on ourselves, let's not let that sink us into like a sad state. Let's see it as like that weight that, we're going to push it back and say, okay, thank you. I'm in my mission, I'm in service, but I'm going to let this make me stronger instead of like consume me. Because if you don't push back, it's just going to be like, because of that pressure. And Saturn's all about pressure, but the pressure creates the diamond.
So have you
heart, like all the vets, you're doing it for the right reasons. It doesn't matter if you were duped. Think of the soul behind that action.
Yeah, that's true, because that's where I think I'm 61. So all of this, Peggy's my, she's my kid, I'm her granny, whatever. But, I'm like looking at life towards the end, I'm looking at that. And I'm realizing that I actually do have more life to live and more experiences to unlock, to where I lived most of my adult life in fear, in I'm not good enough. I was in a failure mode for most of my time. And so now I'm stepping out of that. And so these things that you're saying is resonating with me, because it's like I've been doing that. That's been my life, everything that you said. And I can see how it is with a lot of other people that are just that circle keeps going around.
It's like, yes. Because, I mean, we were raised by things, right? And being raised by something, the fact that it got infected with conditioning and like all these things that would like direct that energy in different ways, it's like, once you snap through that, but at the same time, be a harmonious force. It's like when you're playing in a band, it's like, ooh, there's something off here. And it's like how do high vibrational beings like move forward in this lower density? This is, I think, what the struggle is we can be in this knowingness and understanding, but like every day we wake up to things that reinforce, just the realness or the physicality of it all. And I feel just tapping into a greater instruction set within ourselves that is looking to be distracted into the propaganda and the narratives that once we reclaim, that's the polarity integration of Neptune, Pisces, and Virgo, Mercury, Earth in the astro chart. You can anchor heaven on earth. You can manifest your dreams. When something comes in and infects it, you're going to manifest what somebody else wants. But that's your creative cauldron to protect and to discern what you're going to allow in, what you're going to not allow in, And this is the navigation thing that we see in our everyday life. We could all show up at a festival and have a completely different experience. Somebody might get robbed or raped. Another person might be like, oh, I was in the front row. It was so fun. Or, oh, I just met the love of my life. Oh, my friend just ditched me and I'm hitchhiking. We all are exposed to the same thing. We all have the different experience.
Right.
And our experience, we need to look at timelines and our reality and future based on the vehicle that we're in and how it, where's perceptions and in light of all these different things that we can pull out on the table to each other that have been grounded as a reality, can we just be willing to unwind from aspects of it? I don't know. Oh my God, you guys, I'm sorry. I'm just rambling. I love talking to you guys. You guys are like,
we love you.
That's a good thing.
Questions. We have
I didn't get any sleep last night, so it's sort of like.
We don't have to go any longer if you're ready to go.
Okay. You want to read that, Peggy?
We have one more question. We talked about parasitic entities. What's the best way to purge them from our mind, body, soul? Any frequency meditations or techniques you can suggest?
Well, I'm a fuck you therapist, sort of, where it's
just
what? A fuck you,
Oh, okay. I thought it was a medical term.
That sounds harsh and that's not maybe appropriate.
You're good. We're both veterans. We don't give a shit.
Sort of a joke.
No.
Because when you determine within yourself that you will no longer put up with something, sometimes the F you, makes that statement. So I was just being silly. So let's not go into that. But, that person that just posed the question, overcoming it all is a destination within yourself that is not going to notice it as much or manifest it as much in your life. There's no hook anymore. There's no growth period that you need to see the distortion in the mirror to be able to find yourself, because something doesn't look right. So you're going to dig deep to be that authentic truth that you are, so our relationships end up being mirrors. Is that mirror somebody talking down to you, somebody being abusive, or somebody that's just making you the best thing that ever happened and they're obsessed? I mean, that's just demented as a stuff. Right. So there's all these different levels, and Libra is the mirror of us and people. And if you don't like what you're seeing and it's not reinforcing the best of all that you are, and they're not receptive to you being able to tell them that, then you're not doing the greater work, because they would be fluid enough to want to jump on board with it.
What about narcissists?
They are super predatory. They know the script, right? They're the actors. I know exactly what to say to this vulnerable person who's in a shit storm. Oh yeah, no, they come in as the problem reaction solution. Is the mind control of the Saturn Moon Matrix. It's oh yeah, I'm all about sacred union. I mean, how many exes do I have that are like that? Oh gosh. Yeah, and it's egomaniacs. They just want to kind of break you down or just sort of flirt and just be oh yeah, you're lucky, you're with me, but then slowly degrade you. Well, if you don't clean up this and do that, and it's just excuse me, this ain't love,
right? Exactly.
Yeah, love is love. You could sit in a pile of insanity and just be I'm just so happy to be with you, instead of the nitpicking and the and it's no, that's not love. Maybe it's somebody else. So
it's control is what it is, basically.
Right. And if we don't have that core self-esteem that's been robbed from us and infiltrated in this form of what's been projected upon us of how it means to be a man or a woman, and all these different examples that are modeled to us, we have to be that warrior that breaks through, and it's just okay, well, this is what I'm experiencing, and I have enough self-worth to define myself in a different way. Like a lot of my healing has been through the lens of relationship. Being a mega Libra, it's just sort of like I know what my intent was, and I know how much like I love that person. But when you realize like there, which is what we're going through as a humanity, when you realize this dependency bond or this contract or commitment, or even just the willingness on a soul level to just be side by side, which is the ultimate, where is all that outer stuff like containing people that were only meant to activate something and then move on? It's like there's almost an inversion to our loyalties, to the things that we care about most end up like hurting us. And like I feel my heart and my loyalty and my compassion and my forgiveness has been a detriment. Like I wouldn't have stayed with that person. I forgave him. I believed in it. It's almost like the backlash of being a loving and kind and empathic person, it's pretty brutal. So, and that's the greater awakening, is when you can still be that person and just know, how to manage it.
I absolutely love your warrior spirit, Laura. I absolutely love it. Thank you so much.
Sense, but yeah, so the Mars North Node and the Libra South Node that humanity is experiencing is, be a warrior. When it comes to your personal self-love, your relationships, your family, and everybody around you, where are you just wanting to mitigate things and just keep the peace? Mm-hmm. Where is it starting to be a detriment? Where are you allowing that to actually harm you? And where can you begin to change things and be that warrior spirit, which is the opposite Libra, Mars, Aries opposition? The Mars is the warrior. The warrior goes to war to bring back unification, right? So when we're talking about vets, they're fighting those kind of wars. That's the deeper spirit of them reincarnating, being the warriors like you guys are, on the front lines, like speaking the truth. That is the greater warrior energy, that the things that are battling each other are actually so in love with each other because it matters so much that you would literally die for it. And then in that explosion, back to the 0 point unified field, it's like, wow, we never needed to like even be in battle. It's like, and now that it's psychological warfare and spiritual warfare, we have to like see that being played out, come to terms with it, so we can like direct all the intense energies, in a better way, not be victimized, like know that, we step it up. But at the same time, I know, going back to the video game, when I beat Tetris, I mean, that was crazy. It was almost like something huge healed in me. So when people interview me, they're like, how did you get to where you are? I wouldn't want to tell them like this part of it, but I swear there was something about being able to do something that others told me I couldn't do, and then prove it to myself on my own, to then validate myself, even though so many people said I couldn't, right? It's like when you're like so trashed or so projected upon, and you achieve something where you're like, wow, I ever thought I was like really stupid and I could never do this or that. It's those moments, when you beat that video game, or you do that thing, or you do something for yourself to remind yourself that those outer thoughts, are going to create your reality if your self-worth is dependent on it. And I just learned to love myself outside of like all the, criticism and confusion. And there's always going to be that. So when we are more embodied in it, can we appreciate the love and the support instead of overanalyzing the attack, right? Like, where is that wounded healer? Where is that broken warrior spirit? Like only noticing things to reinforce the pain and the suffering of like, the toll it takes, versus, the ones that are there and like really get it. It's this multidimensional war we're in. And then there's the wound of the unconscious person. It's just like they don't quite understand, and you just want to help. It's a very mixed bag.
Yes,
right.
So
I can
you
go
have
ahead.
cosmicgaia.org. If I can speak here properly, what services do you offer there if people were interested in reaching out to you?
Yeah, I do astrology sessions. It's really about understanding the patternings and the in the story planets, the north and south node, the progressions, the transits. If you're feeling like lost or you're stuck in something, or you want a little bit more clarity, I've learned so much about astrology. And it's funny because nobody wrote down my birth time when I was born, right? So I'm still like contacting my mom and dad. I'm like, can you guys just meditate on this? Like, when was I born? So I did the pendulum, did my cards and everything, just get the exact birth time. But yeah, what I'm trying to say is I've got enough to gain a greater understanding of things. I mean, I just talked to a person who's in a wheelchair, who's a starseed, who's informing her physical vessel how to beat the odds of what the medical industry is saying that her body can do or not do, right? So I kind of work it in understanding that, these water elements, these higher dimensional energies want to be anchored and grounded. That polarity integration wants to happen, to like do all these things. And with astrology, you can just sort of notice the patternings or the things that have interfered with it. It's about rebuilding and healing the DNA, because 12 strands, 12 zodiac signs, and then the 13th, which is the ether element, purifying all of the elementals. What is causing a person to resist that energy? To flow through them and reassure them that as much as it looks crazy out there in the world with all the narratives and all the bad news, that when you can just create that reconnect, that that was the missing piece all along, and that is going to like help to manifest a greater reality. Because if there's weapons that can manipulate the planetary grid network and the elementals, us being elemental beings, with our own energy grids in our own physical body, I mean, one just has to break through the things that are keeping us connected to it, which comes through the indoctrination, the Project Mockingbird, and all these things that came after the Second World War, the war on consciousness. So that is the battleground. Just free yourself from that, and everything will manifest accordingly to the shifts that you make within yourself. The brain computer, needs to operate in a way that is way more empowered. Write a different script for yourself, be true to yourself.
Do you think it'll make a change in the world if there's enough of us?
That's always the question. I mean, I think about that a lot. It's like, okay, we can know it as much as we know it, right? And then the question is, do enough of us know it for this to actually be something we manifest? How is that going to appear on the world stage? It's such a good question, right? So when I see and really feel into like bifurcation, it's a frequency mismatch that can no longer really sustain walking together anymore. And I think a lot of us have a lot of patience and a lot of invested interests and a lot of like soul healing to do still, as much as we think we're awake, but we're still like maybe struggling in some way. We're still like walking like a parallel timeline together of, I feel, the artificial and the organic ascension timeline. And there's going to be a certain point where each of us decide to break away from it completely, and understanding that if you aren't able to integrate into it for it to change, you need to pull yourself out. And it's no different than relationship. When you think about the bond of like love and you get that red flag, it's like, oh, maybe we should just be friends, right? So like the system, like, I can do my own thing. I'm self-employed. I'm going to just grow my own food. I got this. Thank you. Leave me alone, right? But why won't they let you go? Because it's vampiric, right? So, but we have to at least own it within our consciousness, what that feeling is of liberation, of like, not just answering something or doing something. And I guess I lived the kind of life that I wasn't afraid to just jump in a vehicle and let out of my car and just like camp or just like wander. If I knew, like, if I'm trying to sell a water purification system, but they're trying to take advantage of people and there's something nefarious, like, I'm like the first person to be like, no way. Right. So these internal like thought processes and archonic energies and 5G and all this stuff, you know, reaching this crisis level in humanity, every single human just needs to determine in the face of it, you know, do you have a better idea? Or are you just going to go along with what you're hearing and sensing? And it's such an inner breakthrough. Are enough of us going to get there to get over that hump? I mean,
That's one reason we want to we actually want to, on the third Saturdays of the month, we don't have a time yet, but we were talking about having a get together for open to not just veterans, but anybody in the community, so that people can come and talk about what they've seen. And so maybe we can all start piecing the puzzle pieces together, because everybody has different pieces. Everybody's at different awakening levels. And, I think if we start giving people places to go and come together and talk about what they've seen, I think we can start waking people up and helping people.
well, it is like a jigsaw puzzle. And so talking about video games and just games in general, it's like the splintering and the fracturing and the compartmentalism within ourselves. Like, are we listening from our soul? Are we working on, our struggles, our traumas? Are we feeling confident enough to achieve our goals and like make it happen? It's like, that all has to be assessed like a vehicle. Like, do you have enough oil? Do you have enough windshield wiper fluid? Like,
right.
It's just the places we're depleted is probably a place that we gave it to somebody else because we knew they needed it, right? Or it got robbed by like a vampiric narcissist. So, it's that dichotomy of either being played and being drained or being generous and being, we need to just like determine within ourselves, what can I handle? What can I not handle? And there's a certain place of maturity where, you experience life enough to know what you like, what you don't like.
Mm-hmm.
But where are we pushing against something that is defining it for us and feel such an uncomfortability with having to answer to it, which is not nature, that is what's being destructed and being destroyed. So that we can move in our like own rhythm more with our own, because they've weaponized all these planetary aspects. Saturn is a time of discipline, self-responsibility, and this and that. So like a growth period for humanity would be like, maybe don't eat fast food, maybe don't watch like things on TV, like a massive growth period.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, it just completely got infiltrated with like this hybridization AI. Like in this new age, we're going to birth a replica of what ascension could have looked like with this false utopia or false globalism or false kind of thing. And all these possibilities cannot be broken down unless the people realize like what they're investing their energy into.
Can you touch on ascension? That's what a Facebook user's just asked.
You either cut the cords with the parasites and the things that you're overly giving to because you care so much, and like turn on yourself for a little bit. Don't be afraid of the whole service to self. It's not like you're exploiting anybody or that like it's dark or evil, but like put the attention on yourself. The level of self-love it takes to just like really explore like, why something might go wrong or like what your tendencies are, and just to really explore, you might realize like a lot of your dysfunctions are coming from a really, really, really good place. So where can you give yourself permission to structure your lifestyle to like protect and support, your deep heart and soul? And that's what I'm trying to do. It's like, okay, there's some things that go over the boundaries of what I'm capable of doing. But if I can like recognize that, and if I can just, be able to explain that or learn from it, and we can all be accepting of it instead of like the lower Saturn like rules and all this and that. It's about soul dialogue. Like, are we speaking to each other on the soul level? The problem is with the world of appearances, and the narcissist thing. You see the good in people.
Right.
They might have that experience within themselves as being the good that they are, and that is a legitimate bonding that happens between that person or that system, the narcissist, the vampire, the otter, and there's some of it that has an open mind to change. But when the parts of it don't want it to change, and it becomes something out of balance, I mean, it's just amazing how
becomes evil.
Absolutely.
I mean, well, evil, the devil card is number 15. 5 plus 1 is the lover's card, right? So how is the devil and the lovers all okay? Because it's the kundalini, it's the sexual energy. When hierogamic union and true union happens, that spiral of energy happens. So when we can integrate the polarities within ourselves, we can activate our kundalini. But when there's all these mechanisms put in place to break that up, the serpentine energy is just more reptilian, more negative ego, more what we see in our societies. But yeah, it's all connected. Rebuilding the realm of structure, moving beyond any kind of authority or tyranny or control, and just taking charge and taking the reins and taking the control for yourself. What rules and limitations do you want to place upon yourself because you chose that? You want to commit to that, like changing your lifestyle versus committing to something that where's the breaking point? We all have our threshold. Some people are like, oh yeah, I can take a lot of pain, right? Well, humans are taking a lot of pain. How much longer are you going to remain in this relationship? The relationship on humanity has with the inverted system. It's like that lover you don't want to lose that you thought loved you, but it's still robbing you. It's that is the break free and break up and remembrance of this deeper inner union within ourselves that can emerge into a greater unity consciousness that is not preying on the weak. It's we're rehabilitating in transparency and honesty instead of some guru or some figure, being the awakening to me is let's not forget what we are made of, and let's not put it. Sorry, go ahead.
I didn't say anything.
You're good.
Mm-hmm.
Neither of us said anything. No, you're actually making a lot of sense. Actually, I have one more question, and I think we'll wrap up because I actually need to go to bio. The terms get a little confusing. Is ascension and enlightenment essentially the same thing, or are they different?
Well, numbers are this is confusing. If you told a flower, oh, by the way, if you try to break it down to a flower just being a flower, it's oh, this is confusing. It's this constant mirror thing. The only reason we're trying to gain self-knowledge is because knowledge has been distorted with mind control and propaganda and narratives. So, it's so much more simple. Just being in our heart, being in our truth, being connected to our greater intention. That is the driving force behind everything that we're doing. What is getting in the way? What is causing us to not be the best for ourselves? Do we make an inner commitment or acknowledge a part of ourselves that wants to heal and thrive and grow and transform? If not, the subpersonality layers that the ego will hold on to disguise the fact that it doesn't want to do that inner work, is going to become this false identity, which is what we see with a lot of leaders that have a lot of, nefarious and dark kind of skeletons. But it's not about judgment. It's about understanding, this trauma that humanity's experienced, losing the mother, has caused them to seek it out and feel a sense of nourishment or acceptance by the false parents of our societies that they want to feel rewarded by, they want to feel validated by, and then there's the ones that rebel and I didn't even, but it's just the parental, societal thing with the mother and the father and our own inner masculine and feminine is just going through this huge sort of reset where it's everything that's been distorted away from that true divine template. We kind of have to purge, but we realize when we settle into that divine template that all these experiences and the uniqueness of it has like created like a beautiful crystal or a diamond or a story or like something so beautiful. It's like we have so much to come together and share with each other of just like freaking like we're doing it. See like what that manifests and creates, no matter how different it is, then this sort of loop in this dark Saturn like prison planet where we can't appreciate that because competition, judgment, ego, and I feel that's what's going to assist the innocence and the children and what is being harvested and siphoned. You know, this overlay relies on feeding on the innocence to have power, and they don't have any power except for, you know, what we give to them. So if people are working in a compartmentalized industry, like they're a teacher, they're a doctor, they're a lawyer, they're just in the system, if you start to notice things and you don't do something about it, it's just, you know, you might be a spiritual person. It's just, no, we need to be greater participants and not just like, oh, yeah, what are the predictions? No, we are co-creating and manifesting. So, you know, let's be more engaged and more like mindful about, you know, the contradictions in our lives between our higher self and our physical self. And can you meld those two together so that you are in a high enough integrity to be able to let that fire spark and rip to shreds any kind of teacher that's going to push shit on your kids that you don't want.
Well, absolutely. Yeah. I've noticed, I tell people often, Laura, that I've noticed silence and violence go hand in hand. If you're silent, violence happens if you don't say anything. And then, you know, that's why I always tell people, if you see something, you need to say something, because if somebody doesn't say something, then bad things are going to keep happening until somebody stands up and says, enough, you know? And right. So I really appreciate you coming on and telling us everything you have, because people need to hear your message. People need to hear the truth to what is out there and the deception that's going on. It means a lot to me that you came and spoke with us. I know it means a lot to Granny. Do you have any more questions, Granny?
No, I just wanted to say I appreciate you coming on because, like I said, I've not ever heard of any of this before. And you did such a great job that I could even though you felt like you didn't, but I understood what you were talking about. It may have been different for you in how you did it, but it made perfect sense to me. And just by the remarks and the questions from our audience, I think that you also did that on many levels with them in opening and hearing and asking those important questions.
Oh, well, that means so much. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
You know, I guess, yeah, the final point is we are so fluid. We have access to like all the creative resources to rewire the brain to manifest and create something way better than what's being like handed to us. This is how we heal ancestral patterns, just societal, you know, like, yeah, however long we witness the madness is what it is. But yeah. Thank you guys. I don't, you know, I'm like a car that's like petering out. I was like, I've had so much fun. I just love your guys' energy. Like, I really.
We've had a blast. Thank you so much. And if you want to come back, we'd love to have you back so you could talk to us about the military industrial complex and the stuff that you've been working on disclosure wise, whatever you'd like to.
Yeah, well, and it's in our DNA, right? It's like there are these benevolent forces. There is all of that. But we have to just move through the barriers that keep us in a limited viewpoint. And not also fall for the, you know, the false hope. I mean, we got to generate that hope and that faith within ourselves because of who we are, what we're doing, and not fear death. And just, it's enough to just show up for yourself, for this world. That is a purpose we should all embrace without worrying about how anybody else feels about it. It comes with the territory. If you're breaking down like the personality matrix, of course the soul center ones are going to be like flung with like nothing but attack, because it's like a temper tantrum. of
Yeah.
this sort of childish mentality that is like so absorbed and obsessed with things that are not getting us anywhere. And then the minute it's like, okay, wow, you better come center. We're beings that have a future, that there's ramifications. It's wonderful to see like more obvious expressions of not hiding as part of who we are. The world of appearances is breaking down to the world of soul.
Mhm.
Yes.
That makes, it does.
Absolutely.
Well,
Well,
can nurture the physical and have compassion for it and heal it, but it's not ruled by it. Sorry, go ahead.
oh no, you're fine. Absolutely. Everything you've said rings home, and I've had so many questions that you've answered and enlightened me tonight. I'm very, very appreciated for everything, Laura. Thank you so very much. And everybody, thank you for viewing tonight. And if you found anything informational or helpful, please like and share. Remember, always and forever, sharing is caring. And so if you see something, say something, and let's work together. I mean, I think we're better together. What do you ladies think?
I think so. And also go to Laura's website at cosmicgaia.org. And I'm sure she's got a lot of information on there. And if there's something that you would like to ask her or have one of her sessions, then that's the place to go and find out how to go about that.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. Love you. Stay out of trouble. Hello.
Oh my God, hold on, Ray. I'm about to pee myself.
Okay. Now, how many people did we have come in?
Oh yeah, this one's gonna sing on YouTube.
Why?
Oh honey, we had almost, I've been watching, people have been coming and going. We almost had like 30 people coming. Uh-huh.
Oh my God, I was about to piss myself. Oh, I hope that wasn't rude wrapping up with Laura, but I kept noticing she was pausing more and more.
I told you she was a good talker.
No, you were good. That's why we need commercials.
Well, that's our producer's fault. I'm kidding, honey. Honestly, didn't think we'd get past an hour with her, Granny.
Oh, we did 2 hours and 8 minutes.
I know. I'm shocked.
And people stuck around.
Yeah. The Facebook user that kept asking questions is a friend of ours that loves Laura. Loves her.
All his followers that he has, all his
friends that are kids, like early 20s, late teens.
He's gonna spread this.
He's fixing to spread this to them. Because he's our friend that's a channeler.
Mm.
Did you end stream yet? No.